I'm going to take you through the milestones of how to get from 0 to 100,000 in a singular month. The process of going from $0 a month to $100,000 a month is a long-winded, volatile, difficult, mind-bending process that you have to go through. And if you do want to go from here to here, you have to understand the different milestones that you're inevitably going to have to reach along the way, because this to this doesn't just happen. It doesn't spawn in, unless obviously you're one of those people that somehow, I don't know, got lucky with something, whatever it may be. The process is difficult, and there's milestones within the process that you have to hit. And in order to actually get from here to here, you need to understand the milestones and how to get to each individual milestone. Because think about it, when starting off, you have the skills that it requires to have nothing a month, to have $0 a month. In order to get $100,000 a month, you need to have a completely different skill set. Everything needs to be transformed, which means you need to understand the steps and the skill sets that's required at each individual bit that's going to help you to get to this point. And that's what I'm going to do in this video. I'm going to take you through the milestones of how to get from 0 to 100,000 in a singular month. And I know what you're thinking, why the hell should I listen to this? Presumably 12-year-old tell me how to make money. Here's a screenshot of my Stripe dashboard. I run a business. I make $100,000 a month. That's why I'm here to talk to you about it. And I've also been through each individual stage from nothing to 1,000 a month, to 5,000, to 10,000, to 20,000, and all the way up to 100,000. And I'm going to take you through what's required at each of those stages to actually hit the next stage, and how you're going to have to kind of change yourself and your business in order to get there. I've got some pointers in front of me that I'm going to kind of read off and go through, and I think this is going to be an extremely valuable video for you if you're someone who is young, who is ambitious, who wants to inevitably hit this goal but has no idea how to get there. I'm going to break it down in as much detail as I possibly can, but of course I'm only going to be covering the actual kind of overarching things, you know, the individual detailed bits to make another dollar on top of another dollar on top of another dollar. This video will take me about 40-50 hours to go through, but I'm going to kind of go through it in an overarching manner, what I've learned at each milestone. And the milestones that I'm going to be talking about are 0, 1, 5, 10, 20K to 100K a month. And I know that this seems absolutely unfathomable with where you're sat right now, assuming you're not making that, but trust me, when you kind of break down the milestones, it becomes much more digestible, much more easier to understand. That's what I'm going to do. So stay, watch, because I promise you, this is the promise, I promise you, you'll leave this video with your mind blown. So we're first going to talk about the milestone of getting from nothing to your first ever 1K in a month. Which I know for a lot of you, you're looking at that and thinking, I'm going to skip to the 5K, to the 10K, to the 20K. But trust me, if you don't know the principles of how to actually do this, there is no point, and I really do mean it, there is no point in you watching the section of the video where I talk about how to get to 100K, because if you can't do this and you don't understand how to do this, then nothing else matters. I promise you that. So please, please, please understand how to do this first before you go to anything else. That's why it's very, very important. So in order to make your first ever $1,000 in a month, you're most likely going to work a job. And for people that are like, how can I make $1,000 a month the quickest? Get a job. I'm not being funny, but it is the easiest, because there's no scalability in it, 100%. There's no kind of risk and reward, 100%, but it's probably the easiest because you apply to the job, you get a job, and you get paid for it. No risk on your behalf. Very, very easy stuff. So if you actually are going from nothing to something, I would recommend thinking about that. Obviously, you're here because you want more than that. You know, you're here because you're clearly an entrepreneur. So we're going to be talking about outside of that box. So the actual first kind of step to hitting your first 1K month is basically by throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks. That's going to be your path to your first ever $1,000 in a month. Because this is going to be the kind of part of your journey where you're trying different business models, different techniques, you're trying YouTube automation, SMMA, you're trying to just monetize your skills as a whole. And that is part of the process. If you don't understand the principles of how to get to 1K a month by throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks, then you're not going to be able to get to 5K a month. Because until you actually understand the key bit being what sticks, then nothing else matters. And you've got to kind of just like accept that this is part of the process. You can definitely skip this by jumping on the craziest business model, but until you actually find that crazy business model, you're going to have to fail a few times over. So everything in this stage from 0 to 1K should be extremely scrappy. It should be messy. It should be you having no idea what you're doing, but you're doing something. And that is the key, the thing you need to make sure that you're writing down. To get from nothing to 1K, you need to at least be taking action. Because if you're not taking action, then you get nothing. nothing. A lot of people at this stage like to procrastinate. They'll think, oh man, I'm gonna start a business. It's gonna be incredible. I'm gonna jump on this business model, do this or do that. But they spend all their time kind of learning and developing, which is fine. But until you actually take any kind of action, you have no idea how you're gonna get here. So please, 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 take action, no matter what you're doing. The scrappy business models, you're reselling phone chargers. That's actually the first thing that I ever did to make money, not even online because I did it in school, but anything. You're washing cars, whatever it may be. This is gonna be scrappy, it's gonna be thrown together, but as long as you're taking action, I promise you, you'll get there. And also something you have to understand is that to get from nothing to one, you're gonna get very lucky. Like a lot of this is kind of just finding like clicks. Oh my God, that makes sense. You're getting lucky because the action that you've taken has met opportunity. And that's basically, if you didn't already know, that is actually just what luck is. Luck is where an opportunity crosses over the action that you take and then you get lucky, aka you've done something and it is basically fallen in your favor. So you want to just start doing shit, start taking action, start trying shit out, because until you do that, I promise you, you can forget that it's just zero. You will be stuck at zero. So please do take some action, just try stuff. It doesn't really matter what it is, because here you're also starting to build up your experience levels. You're also starting to get an understanding, starting to real kind of like understand the concept of actually what is it to make money. I have to provide something in return for money. This starts to make a lot more sense now, and then you start to develop and expand your understanding. To give you an idea, my path from nothing to 1K was social media management, right? So I had no idea what I was doing. I tried the business models, I tried a bunch of different things, and I signed one client, actually, well, it was a few. I signed one client for $400 a month to manage their social media, a restaurant in my area, and then I did it to another two. So I actually got to $1,200 a month. This was actually dollars, so I guess it would be, sorry, this was pounds. So I guess my first path to 1K was by signing two restaurants to manage their social media. And that was as a result of trying shit, messing up, trying again, messing up, trying again, messing up, trying again. And I ended up getting to there for a business model that wasn't viable. It wasn't good, but it was a start. So if you want to get from nothing to one, try shit. I promise you it will happen sooner than you think. And then we move to your first ever $5,000 in a single month. Now this is a slightly different process to the first 1K, right? This is where you actually understand. Something has clicked, something works. You've tried something and it makes sense. Hold up, if I offer to manage this restaurant's social media, they'll pay me money for it. I could do that 5 times over and I can make $2 grand from it. This is starting to make sense, it's starting to click. That is the process of getting to 5K. It's where you find something that works, number one, and you start to actually implement some systems such as outreach, softwares, and this kind of thing. So you find something that works. And that's a pretty liberating experience once you actually do find something that works. And now before you actually hit your first 5K month, you do have to go through the process of going from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 before you get to 5. And this process of actually getting to 5 or actually hitting a 5K month is where you start to implement systems into your business. You start to implement outreach methods and you start to implement softwares. I'm assuming that this is a service-based business that you're kind of interested in running. So you find something that works, number one, and number two is you start to implement systems. And these systems are very, very basic, don't get me wrong. It's things like softwares, right? Like understanding, okay, outreach, understanding, all right, so if I actually did this to make the 1K, I can do that 5 more times and I'll make the 5K. But in order to do that 5 more times, I need some kind of system in place, something that helps me get there. So if you're running a service-based business, this is the like of outreach systems. Maybe you're using different softwares or you're using different automations. It could be absolutely anything, but you're not going to get to 5K without implementing something, because you'll learn a lot within business that a lot of business is a numbers game. You have to keep doing and doing and doing over and over and over again before you start to see result come out the other end. And also to get to your first 5K, you have to start positioning yourself differently. And what I mean by that is that positioning yourself differently basically just means that you don't consider yourself to be a 18-year-old that has no idea what they're doing anymore. Now you've actually got a proof of concept. You understand something, you've grabbed it. So you have to position yourself differently. You have to position yourself as an entrepreneur, a business owner, because with that you start to align your life with that idea. The actions that you take start to be aligned with the idea of you being an entrepreneur, a business owner. And that's very, very, very important, because a 5K a month business is a, 60K a year business? And with that, it will come closing bigger deals, because once you're getting started, you're working with restaurants in your area, you're grabbing whatever you can, you make your first 1, 2K. To get from 2 to 5, let's say, you've got to start kind of getting more foundational. You've got to build out the basics in a bit more detail. You've really got to understand your offer, who you're helping, how you're helping them, how you can do it at scale and all this kind of stuff. So another part of getting from nothing to 5K is actually kind of like building a foundation. And the foundation also being your kind of systems that you put in place and this kind of thing. For me, for example, I actually went from like 1 to 5K with managing social media, with doing it for these restaurants. But the difference that kind of took me from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 is that I started off with restaurants in my area, 2 clients, 3 clients, restaurants in my area. I then realized, hold up, if I want to do this at scale, there's not enough restaurants in my area to allow me to do this. So I started to implement systems. I started to go on platforms like Upwork, like freelancer websites, and see if I could find better and bigger gigs on there. To do that, however, I had to start to really lay the foundations, right? I had to like actually create my business website. I had to create my business name. I had to build up all the basics before I could list myself as a professional. And I really saw myself as an entrepreneur. I started to track my, my clients and my payments in things like Excel spreadsheets and whatnot. And this seems silly, I get it does, but this is very, very important to get to 5K. It's how you have to, number one, position yourself differently. I'm not a 17-year-old anymore that's begging for money. It's actually, I'm a business owner and I want to do deals with you. I want to sign clients and this kind of thing. And it's very important to do that, because if you stay from that perspective of I'm a freelancer, then you will forever be a freelancer. You want to set yourself aside as a business, as an agency, something that has scalability in it, which is very, very important. So for me to go from 1 to 5, I started using platforms, I started using systems, and I started using outreach systems. I started using, for example, email automation systems and whatnot. And that got me to the point of 5K, where I had 2 restaurants in my area. I had a crypto startup I was working with. I had some e-commerce kind of startups I was working with as well. And that got me to my first ever $5,000. It was actually £5,000, so it was well over kind of $6,000 in a singular month, which is very, very cool. But the other thing to remember is that you still kind of have no idea what you're doing. Even when you're at 5K a month, it's still very, very scrappy. You're still just kind of doing whatever you see fit, because part of your time is spent on education, learning and improving yourself and understanding how to actually deliver your service. And the other part is just spent on taking action. And with taking action, you start to learn more and more and more. So obviously a big part, as it will be throughout the rest of your entire business, is taking action. And therefore you kind of triple down on the action that you're taking to get to 5K, and you start to implement systems, you start to position yourself differently and really lay the foundations. That is all you need to do to get to 5K, because what you're basically doing is you're just rinsing and repeating what got you to 1K. You understand at 1K, cool. If I actually do this, I'll get this at the end. If I want to get to 5K, I have to do this, but do it 5 times more. And the last thing I would say about getting to your first 5K is you start to get serious on the moving pieces of your business, which I'll explain a bit more in a minute. The moving pieces of your business basically being the things that actually produce results. This is where you get a bit more serious on, like, right, I shouldn't be, I don't know, focusing on how many friends I have on Instagram or whatever it is, or how my presentation looks. Like, you've got to start focusing on the bits that actually produce a result for your business, such as your outreach, such as your sales, such as your delivery, whatever it is. But I'll explain a bit more in a second about that. So that's your first to kind of like 5K. And then we move to 10K. Do it in blue this time, we're getting serious. So this is where you really start to utilize leverage a bit more. And leverage basically being things that you can use that will excel your progress. So leverage are like their websites, their softwares, their teammates, where you can basically say, hey, I'm gonna hire you, you do all this shit for me that I don't wanna do, and I basically reap the reward from it, which is basically what leverage is. So here's where you really start to utilize leverage, because at 5K a month, you can do everything yourself, 100%. At 10K a month, you can probably do a lot of the stuff yourself, but in order to really get to 10K and be there consistently, you need to start delegating. You need to start using systems and people around you, softwares, tools, whatever it may be, people, if that's the kind of path that you want to go down, because it's going to be very, very important. You can't do everything and anything. It doesn't work. And even if you can at the start, you won't be able to do it forever. And you start to understand as you go on that time is quite literally your most valuable asset. And if you're utilizing that to the best of your ability, the best that you possibly can, then it's just going to eat away at you in terms of like your time goes and you don't get it back. At 10K is also where you start to get results as well. I mean, before 10K, hopefully you would get results. Otherwise, I'd be a bit worried that why the hell are you at 10K? But then you've got to start milking these results. You've got to start really utilizing the results that you're getting and start showcasing your results to other people, because this is a massive proof of concept that you know what you're doing and you can do it, whether it's reviews, it's testimonials, whatever it may be. Now you've got results and you can start to milk them, because like I said, the best proof of concept that you can possibly offer is, I just did this for John. Why the hell don't you want me to do it for you? Or why this could work exactly the same for you. And you've really got to start utilizing that to the best of your ability, because I promise you it will help you scale so much. Another factor of actually getting to 10K per month is to really focus on the small bits. And I know this sounds a bit weird because just before I was like, just focus on the moving pieces, only do what's important, but it's kind of like a mix of both, right? And what I mean by focus on the small bits is that you'll start to understand that everything you do within your business has a knock-on effect, and that knock-on effect has a knock-on effect that has a knock-on effect that has a knock-on effect, so on and so forth. So by kind of going backwards on that knock-on effect, you start to identify the small bits that actually produce a big result. So this is where you start to pay attention to seemingly silly things, such as, I don't know, your website and the text on your website, and you start to look at that and you go, all right, so how will this actually make someone feel? And what will be the knock-on effect of how they feel? Will it make them book a call? Will it make them go off my website? And you've got to start doing this, because this is where you've got to start to optimize, basically. So focusing on the small bits, basically meaning optimize. Sorry, the camera just died on me, but we're back and kicking. So 10K a month, focus on the small things, optimize. Optimize absolutely everything you possibly can, because the small things matter, they compound. The next thing you need to focus on, especially if you want to get to this 10K in a month mark, is focus on what moves the needle. Now, what I mean by this is that when you're at this point, you have a very, very clear idea of what works and what doesn't, right? Because you're making 10K a month, or even before you get to that point. Now, when you identify what does work and what doesn't, you need to start to eliminate what doesn't. And I don't mean kind of just like, obviously you do that as you naturally progress anyway, but what I mean more specifically is that get rid of the things that just don't matter whatsoever. You only need to focus on the actual things that move the needle, the things that actually make the difference in your business. When you do find what works, you find the pieces that actually make you money, or actually help you scale, or help you sign new clients. What you do with those things is you start to double down on them, you start to triple down on them, you start to quadruple down on them, whatever it is. You start to really get picky with your time and focus on only the things that move the needle, and focus very, very heavily on those things that move the needle, because those are the only things that should matter within your business. Because I know when starting off, when you're on that 1, 2, 3, 4K a month mark, you are doing everything and anything. And the problem with that is that your time is spread everywhere, your focus is split up everywhere, but when you actually identify what moves the needle and you can double, triple, quadruple down on that, it's going to help you make much more progress in a much shorter amount of time, and most importantly, help you scale to that 10K in a month mark. Now, the next thing that you have to do to actually get to that 10K a month mark is to detach your emotion from the result that you get. And not only that actually, but also detach the emotion from what you do. Because again, when starting off, when you're kind of scaling to this amount, everything's very emotional. It's, you know, it's your business, it's your baby. Everything that you're doing is attached to emotion, but you need to start to actually detach that emotion if you want to scale quite flawlessly. And that is detaching emotion from the result that you get, and also from the action that you're putting in. You know, this is where kind of discipline comes into it and stuff like that, where it's not like, oh, I'll do it when I feel like it, but it's, I'm going to do it because I know I have to do it, because that's how I make progress. Not only from the work that you put in, but also more importantly, the result, because things will go up and down constantly, but you need to detach your emotion from those results that you get and just focus on the input that you're actually putting into the work, right? You need to focus on like the stuff that you actually can control. It's like growing a personal brand. You know, I talk to a lot of people about like making content and growing a personal brand. And one of the biggest things I say is that detach your emotion from the outcome that you get, from the views, from the likes, from the metrics. Focus on the input, what you can control. Focus on how many times you posted. Pat yourself on the back when you've posted every single day, not when you've got really good views on one video or loads of comments on the other one. Pat yourself on the back when you're focusing on the input and you're controlling the input, because that is the only thing you can do, and that is coming from a detaching the emotion from the result that you can get. Making content, growing a business, whatever that is, very, very apparent, because if you are very emotionally attached, you will not be able to scale, because you'll be very risk averse, right? If you're very emotionally attached, everything is quite scary. You don't want to do things that put you outside your comfort zone because you get upset about it, you get emotional. When you're detached, you can scale much easier, let's say, because of the fact that the risk that you take isn't tied to the emotion that you feel, which is very important. And the final thing I'll say to get to the 10K a month mark is to plant seeds of potential growth. Now, what I mean by plant seeds of growth is that this is where you start to kind of understand that you've got to play a bit of the longer term game, right? When you're starting off, you're very focused on the money directly in front of you, the money, the paycheck at the end of the month, how much money you've made within 30 days, because that's what people kind of make it out to be. I am probably not the best person for that, because I like the idea of kind of making money quickly and starting a business quickly, but nonetheless, you need to start planting seeds of potential future growth. This is the idea of starting to post content on social media where you won't see a result for ages, but you're planting a seed of what could come in the future, which is very, very important. This is the things of like, I don't know, focusing on you building your personal brand, maybe building connections. It could be focusing on like SEO and stuff like that. No matter what seed you plant, talking in the real world here, you have to nurture it, you have to water it, you have to give it the necessary kind of like nutrients that it needs to actually blossom into whatever that you're growing. There's no way no world in which you plant a seed and it grows into a beautiful flower and blossoms the next day. So you've got to start like understanding that and plant seeds for future growth. You need to understand that you need to start planting seeds so that when you do scale beyond then, you have a personal brand, you have the right connections, you have a really good SEO presence, you have like, I don't know, it could be the idea of like, let's say you start running ads for your business, you know, and you start planting the seeds now and start watering them, tweaking them, improving them, so that when you're, 3 months in the future, these seeds have turned into something fantastic and you can start to kind of pick the fruits of your labor. But that is kind of like the summary of what I would say you need to do to get to that 10K a month mark. So utilize leverage, make a hire, build a team, software, whatever it is, have results, milk them, use those case studies, use those testimonials, put them on posters, put them on your websites, focus on the small wins, optimize absolutely everything because everything matters, focus on what moves a needle, double down on it, triple down on it, quadruple down on it, detach emotion from the result, otherwise you'll never scale, and plant seeds of potential future growth. All right. Cool. So now we are talking about $20,000 per month. Here's what you need to do to get to that $20,000 per month mark. I know for a lot of you that seems absolutely ridiculous, and it is, but it is definitely obtainable. So let's talk about, and bear in mind, everything I'm talking about, it includes everything prior, of course, right? But let's talk about the things you need to do, the steps you need to take to get to your first $20,000 month. Now, the first thing I would say is that you need to start to find accelerants. What I mean by accelerants is that there are certain things in business, when you're growing a business, that basically accelerate you to the next level. And these may not be things that you necessarily thought of originally or things that you want to do, because a lot of the time these accelerants do cost money, which is another way of, I guess, saying like investing back into your business, right? That you need to actually start to put money into the fire to fuel the fire and make the fire bigger so you can make more money. But things like accelerants could be running paid media. You know, that's something that a lot of people starting up a business when you're on that 10K a month mark, it doesn't even seem reasonable whatsoever, because you know that in order to succeed with ads, you've got to put thousands and thousands and thousands into it. And that you think that's ridiculous. But to get to that kind of 20K a month mark, or even when you're at that 20K a month mark, you need to start to find accelerants that is going to help you make more progress in a short amount of time, or not even amount of time, but just make more progress, because you will always reach a limit. You'll always reach a cap. No matter how good your cold outreach is, how good your scripts are, your audit offer is, whatever it may be, there's always going to be accelerants that you can utilize to kind of get to that next level. Like I said, it could be socials, it could be ads, it could be events, it could be running campaigns or whatever it is, stuff that's going to just help you grow. It's going to accelerate you. Typically be like big pushes at a certain amount of time. It's kind of hard to explain, but you need to always look for accelerants within your business, especially at 20K per month. This becomes much more apparent because you start to dry out on the methods that you've used to get to 5, 10, 15K a month, which means this is very, very important. You know, I don't really know many agencies at 20K plus per month that still focus only on cold outreach. They don't really do that. You know, they have accelerants, they have paid ads, they run write blogs, with like really strong SEO presence. They have partners or whatever it is, things that just accelerate their business to the next level. So you need to kind of, let's just say, get rid of the caveman methods, you know? No caveman methods. And now, like, doing cold outreach and stuff like that, right, is imperative, don't get me wrong. Like, it's very, very important to get to this point, but when you want to kind of scale from beyond this point, you need to start looking at more kind of like accelerants. No caveman methods, no spending every single day doing your outreach one by one by one by one. You should be looking at YouTube videos, ads, blogs, whatever it may be. You know, look at the big companies out there within your space and look at what they're doing. How are they basically getting clients? You know, how are they getting traffic and stuff like that? You need to be doing the same. The next thing I would say to get to 20K per month is that you need to start growing vertically as well as horizontally. When you have a business and you're selling something to any market, it could be products, it could be a service, whatever it may be, you can either grow horizontally, which basically means selling to a bigger market, selling to a wider range of people, or you grow vertically, which basically means selling to fewer people, but selling various different amounts of products, different variants of the products, or whatever it may be, or services, you know? And when you want to scale to 20K per month, you'll start to kind of not run out of the market, because there's always going to be an endless market and you can always expand, but you'll start to realize that in order to scale, you've got to start looking at growing vertically. Like, how can you really utilize and double down on the current market you have? If you're a service-based business, I don't know, running Facebook ads, right? Very obvious cliche one. How can you make more money per customer? That's the kind of question you've got to ask yourself. You know, how can I really take one person and squeeze as much money as I can out of them while still providing the value? And that is basically the idea of growing vertically. It's basically obviously growing this way as per to this way, okay? It's this one here. And it basically means that not looking for more market and more market and more market, but looking at your current market and thinking, how can I really utilize them? Because everyone starting off focuses on the horizontal. They focus on like, cool, I'm just gonna keep expanding market whilst I give my offers and try and work with them, whatever it is. But actually, you should be looking at vertically, because if you can do horizontally and vertically, you've maximized everything. Because at that point, think about it, right? If you're doing really well this way, you've got like a really big market and you've got a lot out of every single market, you've got a fucking square. And that square is basically a lot of money. So focus firstly, obviously on horizontally, but when you get to this point and you want to kind of scale more, focus on vertically. How can you make more money per customer? Right, another thing to grow to 20K per month that I would say is that, apologies for the bad handwriting and the messy kind of organization, but become a thought leader in your space. Now, this is another very, very important one. The reason being is because when you're kind of like scaling on beyond that 20K per month mark, or even to that 20K per month mark, you need to start to position yourself as someone who knows their shit, knows what they're talking about. This is the idea of building a personal brand, but you don't have to do it as a personal brand. You know, a lot of founders and stuff like that will choose the likes of media and PR and like putting themselves in publications and whatnot to become a thought leader in the space. But it's very, very important nonetheless. If you want to really scale beyond that and to 20K and above and beyond, you need to become a thought leader. And you can either do that through PR, paying loads of money, or you start to grow your own personal brand and become a thought leader that way. Much more organic, but much more effective, because the people that find you are also organic, right? And they actually know you for you and not because they saw you in a publication. You don't have to have a personal brand to be a good business owner and make a lot of money, but I'm saying that it massively helps, it massively benefits you to become a thought leader, because people will naturally come to you. You want to become a magnet, and in order to become a magnet, you need to put yourself out there, because people will start to find you and come to you because of the value that you're putting out, or the kind of like the credibility or social proof that you have. So you can start doing this much early on, but it only really works when you're kind of making a solid amount of money, because you're not only saying, hey, I'm a thought leader, but it's proven, right? It's like, I'm a thought leader, here are my 10 clients. Makes a lot more sense. So really focus on becoming a thought leader in the space. Extremely, extremely important. And you'll see the kind of changes it will make. And the last thing I would say to get to 20K is focusing on the 80-20 principle. Now, I know this is a very cliche one, the 80-20 principle. I know it is. You probably heard it and you're making no money. So you're like, well, why is it only important at this amount? It's not. It's important at every single stage. But when you're at 20K a month, the more money you make, I'm not being funny, but the more responsibility that you have, the more you have to do, the more you have on your shoulders, the more work you've got to do. And basically what I'm trying to say is that because of that, you need to focus on the moving pieces in your business, the only bits that actually matter. And I said this as well at the 10K per month, where you start to focus on like, how can I double down on what works? You need to identify what the 20% is that actually produces 80% of the results and put all your focus into that. And the other parts you start to delegate, you start to give away. Like, what is the action that you can take right now at that amount of money that's going to help you continue to grow your business? And there's always going to be a 20% that produces 80%. That's literally just like the laws of nature, I guess. But until you find that, you will be doing 100% of everything, and that is no way to scale. So you need to identify the 20% so that you can focus on that entirely. And when you are completely focused on the 20% becomes much better, because it's like, well, all of my action now is into those few tasks that actually make the result. So when you're at this amount, maybe you manage a team, maybe you only focus on a certain aspect of the business because that's the important part and you have someone to focus on delivering. Whatever it may be, identify that 20% and utilize it. Very important. Those are the things I would say are crucial to get to 20K per month and scale beyond. And you'll notice as I keep going up the numbers, there's less things on the list. And it's funny because that is like, as you keep making more money, you've actually done the majority of the hard bits, you know? There's a lot to do to get from 1 to 5 to 7 to 10 to 15K. When you start going above and beyond, it's like, there's not like a crazy different amount of things to do. It's just doing more of what you're already doing and changing smaller bits, because less is more, especially when you scale up. So that's 20K, very, very important. Let's talk about the big boss, the big daddy number. There you go. That's a bit more punchful, isn't it? 100K. Cool. So what are the things you can do at $100,000 or to get to $100,000 a month? What are the biggest changes that you have to make from 20 to 100? And I do go from 20 to 100 and not talk about 50, 60, 70. It's because there isn't much different that you have to do at 50, 60, 40. Like, you're just doing more of what you're currently doing and you're finding more systematic ways to do it. The biggest milestone is obviously 100K, because a lot of stuff does change 100%. So if you want to get to 100K a month, one of the biggest things I would say you need to focus on is that you need to get comfortable with spending money, because this is basically the idea that delegation becomes extremely important, even to get to 100K, not to scale beyond. But you need to become comfortable with spending money and delegating the work that you know that other people can do better than you, but you're not delegating already because you think you're the best at everything. And that is a mindset that I had, and I know that a lot of other people have, especially when they've grown a business from nothing, where you think like, I know how to do everything, I'm the best at doing everything. But let me tell you this, if you want to get anywhere near to this amount of money, you need to find people that are better than you at doing the things that are necessary within your business to grow. And you need to basically pass that stuff off to them. Because if you don't and you try and do everything and anything, you'll do everything and anything 100%, but you'll do it very poorly. You'll do it to a poor standard. So you need to find people that are better than you at doing it. And part of that is becoming comfortable with spending money. This is where like it's kind of necessary to start to build out a team and find people that are really good at what they do. I have it in my business, you know, it took me a while to kind of realize that, hold up, there are people that are actually pretty good at doing what I think I can do pretty well, that can do it better than me. And now I have a team of about 6 people now, which is very, very cool. And I was only able to get to that point because I kind of, that mindset switch of like, right, I need to actually just get comfortable with spending money because I know more will come as a result. The funny thing is, it's like the money paradox is that the more you spend, the more money you spend, the more money you get out of it. And that's always going to be the case. It may not be straight away. It may not be like, oh, you know, I spend $1, I get 5 back. Not the case at all. But over time, the more money you spend, in the right places, of course, and towards the right kind of pieces of leverage, the more money you will inevitably get out of them. And that does come with building a team, with delegating as well. Delegating is probably the most important way I'll say here, just because of the fact that if you don't delegate, you're doing everything and anything. It's extremely inefficient. It's never going to work as well as you want it to. So please get comfortable with delegating. It's extremely, extremely, extremely important if you want to scale. And if you want to live a life like whilst you're doing it as well. If you want to like build a business whilst actually being happy, living a life and doing what you want to do, which is I'm assuming the reason you actually started the business in the first place, you need to get comfortable with delegating. It's that kind of idea of like, would you rather have the entire pie of like a kind of a small pie, or would you rather have 3/4 of a much bigger pie? Probably 3/4 of a much bigger pie and a nicer life as a result of it. So please become comfortable with delegating. The second thing I would say is that you need to get systematic with your business, okay? And what I basically mean by that is that you can't run a business like this on fucking Excel spreadsheets, all right? You can't run an entire business, a $100,000 per month business on Excel spreadsheets. This is where you need to start getting systematic, not only with the tools and the softwares you use, but basically finding an optimized version of everything. But the way I like to see it is that you need to start kind of like splitting up your business into different sectors and kind of factors and expanding them individually, okay? So what I mean by that is that, let's say you have your business here, okay? And your business is actually split up into 5 different sections. Like there's 5 big sections of your business, whether it's outreach, maybe one part of it is sales, maybe part of it is delivery, maybe part of it is, I don't know, logistics, it could be anything. Let's just say there's 5 different aspects of your business. You need to split these kind of like sections up and make it very clear what those sections are. Like again, let's say it's like a sales, growth, delivery, logistics. Let's just say there's another one there, I don't know what it will be, but there's another one. You need to really split these sections up and grow them individually. Like that's where you become systematic with your business, where you're not just thinking like, oh, how can I grow my business? And just do more of what you're currently doing, which is probably the answer, but you need to break it up in as much detail as you possibly can, because ideally, sales should have your own team. Growth should have your own team. Delivery should have your own team. Logistics should have your own team, and like processes. And within them should probably have their own roles. Do you know what I mean? Like there should be a lot of moving pieces within your business here, so you need to start getting systematic with how it works. Not only that, but with your time. Like one of the biggest changes I made in my business, and it came from like the book, The 4-Hour Work Week, which is basically a book about getting systematic with your time, literally just about how to get systematic with your business and your time, is like, for example, I used to do calls all day, every day, any day of the week. Now I've like split it up, so I only take calls 2 days of the week. And that is part of me becoming systematic with my time, because this way I'm not spending loads of my time doing meaningless calls all of the time. Now I have it kind of systematic and processed. I have team calls on certain days with certain groups of people, so I can make sure everything's moving as it should be. And that's part of it. So systematic with your time and with your business. This is where you start to split everything up and you start to dissect it a bit. Cool, look at sales. All right, what are the moving pieces within sales? What are the different aspects that actually make money, right, for the business? Split it up again, and you keep going individually until you start to optimize. But part of it is getting systematic. It needs to be a cog, like a machine. I don't know how to draw a cog, but that is an awful cog. Can you see that? Yeah, so there's your cog. It needs to be like a machine. It needs to be well oiled. And to make it well oiled, you need to make sure that you're giving it individual processes. Now, I could explain this in detail to you. I might do it in another video because doing it here is going to be ridiculous. And it's going to take hours and hours and hours to do. So I might do it in another video, but just know in your head that, okay, cool, I need to start systemizing things. I need to start becoming systematic. So I'm not running a business on Excel spreadsheets, but I have CRMs and different softwares and platforms and tools that I use. I was using an Excel spreadsheet for my business up until the point of about 70K in a month. Now I don't because it's like ridiculous, right? And this is also like automations and stuff like that. Like you need to implement automations in your business for lead flow, for client retention, for acquisition, for sales, whatever it may be. There needs to be like an automated system that you can just kind of like press the button on for and everything flows as it should. Otherwise, again, you're doing everything and anything and it's not gonna work. So take a mental picture of this awful drawing because I'm gonna rub it off to explain the next point. The next thing I wrote down that you need to do is get very picky with your time, but that's kind of the same idea as like systemizing it. Like I said, this book here, if you want to scale to 100K per month, very, very good book to read. I actually read this book before I was making any money whatsoever. It was a very pointless book to read when I was making no money because nothing here applied to me whatsoever. It was about like how to systemize your emails and your calls and stuff like that. And I was like, I'm not getting any emails, any calls. So this is only worth reading, again, when you're making money, but it's a really good book to read nonetheless, quite a big one as well. So yeah, make sure you're systematic with your time because your time is your only asset that you do not get back. So you don't want to lose that, all right? Another thing I guess I would say, which is important to actually get to 100K per month, is that you need to develop your stress tolerance here, so you can see. Because as you grow your business, especially to these kind of like big amounts, it becomes much more stressful. And if you don't think it is, then you're kind of delusional. And you've got to kind of just like make a choice whether you want that or not. I know it sounds kind of silly, but you don't have to be really stressed in your business. But if you don't want to be very stressed, or not even stressed, but you don't want to take on a lot, then don't even think about scaling to these numbers. But if you are kind of like willing to take the bads with the goods and scale into 100K, but obviously be more stressed and take on more work, then just kind of accept that you need to develop your stress tolerance. Because if you don't develop your stress tolerance, then what tends to happen is that you'll grow to these amounts, or you'll try and grow to these amounts, and it will crumble beneath you because you'll get overworked, you'll get like stressed out, whatever it may be. Now, I like to think that I have a pretty good stress tolerance level, I guess just through experiences in life, but also growing the business. You know, you start to get more comfortable with things going wrong because you just understand it's part of the process. You zoom out on the graph, you understand, right, it's going up in general. I just need to focus on this immediate thing directly in front of me. But he's really focusing on how can you manage and kind of optimize your stress tolerance, because again, it does get more stressful. It's just about how do you use it? How do you kind of like work around it? I'm not saying like find it out, you know, start drinking, start smoking. That's not what I'm saying at all. Find a good like out of it. But yeah, you need to identify how can I manage that, because it does get more stressful, I promise you. That's part of the process. And that, ladies and gents, is like, is the majority of it. And I know that with this 100K section, there's only 3 things, probably 4, but 3 things. And you're thinking, what the hell? There should be more for 100K a month. No, right? No, there's actually, let me just see. There's 24 different things that I've actually mentioned in this entire video. This is just 3 of them because, like I said, as you scale up to the bigger numbers, there's actually less changes you have to make necessarily. It's just doing more of what works, more of what you know how to do, and you will inevitably get to this point, but these are some changes I would recommend you do kind of make, or some things you focus on if you want to kind of scale to these amounts of money. So hopefully like you have a kind of good idea now of like what it requires at every single different level to scale to the next. And I know that for a lot of you, this isn't going to be relevant in terms of like these different sections that I'm talking about, but it's well worth keeping in the back of your head that, okay, it's not scary as you go up and at the top, it's just doing what I know works, doing more of it, optimizing, critiquing, finding new avenues for growth and this kind of thing. So I hope you kind of have like a better idea now on actually what it takes at different milestones to actually get from nothing or 1 all the way up to $100,000 per month. And the funny thing is, like the really funny thing is that in order to get from here all the way to here, all you're doing is this 100 times over. Like, I know it sounds stupid, it sounds silly, but that's all you're doing. You're doing that 100 times over, but just along the way, you start to implement different processes, you start to hire people, you start to focus on different things, you start to prioritize different areas of your business and think about it more systematically, and you start to make yourself a thought leader in a space. But realistically, to get from here to here, it's doing this 100 times. That's the kind of gist of it, right? I hope that makes sense. And let me know kind of what you want to see a video on next, because I've covered quite a lot here. If there's any particular part that I've gone through that you want me to kind of like dive into in a bit more detail, please do let me know in the comments down below, and I'll kind of dive into it in a bit more detail. But that is like the gist of it. That's the milestones that I found to be probably the most important. There are definitely some things I'm missing out on, but hey, I've done this on a kind of whim off the top of my head. So those are the things that I found to be quite important in me scaling from, again, this number, this little one down here, all the way up to that big one. I hope you guys learned something. Been fun recording it over the past 2 days. Subscribe and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.